Welcome to the Starter Girlz podcast, the show dedicated to the Starter Girl. She's an achiever, she's a creator, she's a magic maker, she's a dreamer, and she is doing all the things. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and welcome to this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz podcast. Wherever you are tuning in today, we are so glad to have you here. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding. I'm so excited about my guest today. So we are going to, I guess this episode, what I want to say is really at the heart of transformation, where love meets healing and life's challenges become stepping stones to a deeper connection and joy. In our sanctuary of stories and wisdom, we explore intricate tapestry of relationships, the sacred bonds that can bring us the greatest joy and sometimes the deepest pain. So I'm excited about my guest today because she is someone who's not only walked through the fire of personal hardship, but has emerged as a beacon of hope and guidance for those seeking to rekindle the flame of love and connection in their own lives. So Jeanell Greene, she's a relationship coach, a marriage expert. She's renowned for breathing new life into relationships teetering on the edge of loneliness and divorce. Her unique approach goes beyond the surface, addressing the generational traumas that hold us back from achieving the true connection and love we yearn. So, Janelle, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm excited to be here.
This could be so much fun. That's the only part of this entire part of this, the whole episode, that I do a script from, that I read something actually from. And I always laugh about this, because I think most of us that are speakers, we just sort of get up and talk, but like that one time we have to have something that's like kind of written there, it's like a whole different game for us. But I always like to sort of kind of paint a picture, and sometimes I don't quite have the words I want to say for that. So I got to put those things together and make sure I get the right messages out there. So there's a little about that, but I'm excited to have you here today and chat with you. And I know we had a little bit of chat time before previously, and then of course, right before we got on here. And so I know we're going to have a great episode, and people tuning into this are going to take away some valuable information.
I hope so.
It'll be fun. All right, so let's talk about this. I want to talk about, first things first, how you got into doing what you're doing, because this right here, I think, is one of those topics. I'm going to say this, and I've probably never said this on the show, but I'm going up on 28 years of marriage, and that is not an easy thing. Being married is not an easy thing, to be in the space of somebody every day. And I think we, as entrepreneurs, leaders, whether we're married or not, we're going through a journey in everything that we do. And marriage is one of those things. Relationships are one of those pieces that I believe are part of the puzzle in how we live our lives and fulfill and find happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what you need to know about me is, before I am who I am today, my former self, I was an executive software sales representative. I worked for one of the largest tech companies in the world. I was a very accomplished, professional. I got to jet set all over the world. I won a free trip for a top producer in Bermuda. The year after that, I won another trip to Rome. And so that's kind of like what my life used to look like. And then around the time I turned 40, I was sitting on my couch and really thinking about, this is pretty much the halfway point of my life. And I kind of did a little rewind and just looked at all the cool things that I'd accomplished. So I'm also a singer. And one of the cool things I got to do is I got to sing. I got invited to sing with Maya Angelou when she was in town, probably about 10 years ago. And I have a picture with her too. And, and I saw these like accolades. And then what I realized was that as amazing as all these things were, I felt like I hadn't really found the top of my mountain yet, and also I had worked so hard to win these trips. And now that I was back from these trips, I was like, okay, now what? Like I've conquered 2 mountains now. Like, what's the next mountain? And, I was getting ready for my 40th birthday, and we were going to have this massive party. And I started to think about what that was going to be like. And so what I had envisioned was myself at the pearly gates of heaven at the end of my life. And St. Peter saying to me, like, Janelle, what did you do with your life? And I had realized that up until that point, it was all about me. Me proving myself, me looking good, me being successful and hitting all those financial goals.
Right.
And I'd done that. and I was still unfulfilled. So I really had to sort of step back and go, okay, well, this is how the first half of my life went. And it was great, but I feel like I've been there, done that. And I want to do something different. And so I really just sat. And at the same time, I felt my soul starting to get really restless. And I know that feeling. It's like, okay, transformation is about to begin, right? It's the next chapter. And I didn't know what that rumbling was. And it just got louder and louder. And it was like crying. It was like sobbing. And it was my soul just not knowing that I was doing something that I was great at, but not something that was authentic to who I was and the capacity of love that I had within me. And so I basically just quit my job. I had no plan B. I just woke up one morning and I said to my husband, I'm quitting my job. I hate my boss. I hate this company. I was traveling. I think I was on 40 different airplanes that year. I was never home. I had a puppy who was dealing with separation anxiety. I had a husband who was not happy that I was always gone. And I was always sick from being on all those planes.
Yeah.
And so I just decided to quit and I hired a coach. And that's how I kind of learned about coaching to help me figure out, okay, if I was to be reborn and if I could do this all over again, what would I do differently? And if I could bring 100% of Jeanell to work every single day, what would that job look like? That was like custom fit for me. And so I went on this journey of really rediscovery. And it was so scary because I realized that I had been wearing this uniform called sales rep since I was like 20. And I had no idea who I was without that. Like I felt naked to the max. Yeah. So anyway, I started to I decided I wanted to be a coach. And then the question was, well, what do I want to coach on? And they said, well, do something that people want, like they automatically want to know about you or something that you think that you could really bring some wisdom to. Mm-hmm. And so, I'm married to Mike. Mike and I have been together for 18 years. We met on the phone. I met him during my divorce, actually. And we just have this unique relationship that is so grounded in trust and friendship and authenticity and vulnerability. And so we have really great communication. And our relationship has actually been quite easy because we have the tools and we both come from really loving parents. So we had really great role models, which I think is so important. And so we just have had this really extraordinary relationship. And now I believe that I can teach the skill because a lot of people, it's not that they're bad people, they don't belong together. They just have either trauma coming from or bad behavior from their parents, like yelling or whatever, or they just have unresolved childhood wounds that haven't been healed from being bullied or being abandoned. And couple that with parents who aren't together or divorced, and then not having the tools and techniques on like, okay, how do we communicate without being passive aggressive? How do we apologize? All these social skills a lot of us were never taught. And so I've created a unique program that is designed not from a place of like they're broken, but rather from a place of compassion and strategy and really accountability and getting clarity on like, okay, this is who you are, but why are you the way you are? Why are you the way you are? And then who do you want to become? What kind of marriage do you want? And so I'm able to move people from zero to hero pretty quickly. And a lot of the clients I work with are dealing with like infidelity. And, we can turn that ship around in like 3 to 4 weeks. Like it's pretty phenomenal when people are committed to something that they care about. But I think my marriage has just been, and my divorce has been very valuable in the work that I do because, I think at the end of the day, what my job is to let people know that they're not alone, that there is hope, and that people understand that they're heard, that they're seen.
Yeah.
So, I've just created an extraordinary business from that. But, I also have to heal my own wounds because when I was 9, my dad cheated on my mom with her best friend.
Oh no.
Who lived in our basement.
Yeah.
And got her pregnant.
Oh my. Wow.
And I was 9 and my brother was 6. My sister was 6. My brother was 3. And then 3 years later, my dad would come back asking for forgiveness because he was sick, he was dying. And my mom took him back and she completely forgave him. And he was a better father and husband until he passed away. And I'm clear that we would have not had that chance to be beside him when he passed had my mom not forgiven him. And so I really emphasize the power of forgiveness, especially when two people have children and are really committed to not repeating the mistakes of their parents as much as possible.
Yeah. No, and I think this is interesting. I'm listening to everything that you say because I think that when we start talking about, there's so much to this. Oh my gosh, because I feel like even in the work that I do, I work with entrepreneurs, and it's not so much that I'm focusing on like spousal type relationships or committed relationships like that, but these same traumas that you're talking about really manifest in all the areas of our lives. And I really believe how you do one thing is how you do all things. So that transference of that, whatever that trauma is, or that belief, that parent, whatever you want to call it, it may show up very differently in all the areas. This is why I talk about the 4 areas on this show. I talk about relationships and money and health and well-being and our careers, because a lot of these patterns, behaviors, they, in my work, will show up in the different areas. And it may come in, I always use the example of money, and I talk about this with myself, and you will probably maybe relate to this, maybe not. But growing up in the home that I did, and I don't want to get into everything in here, but I had a lot of bad ideas about money. The way money, I perceived as if you had a lot, you were probably snotty because you had it. And I believe that you had to work hard. There was a lot of things that I had heard and belief systems I had. And the way that those showed up very differently in my life is that in my personal life, very frivolous. I didn't really regard it the same way as I did in my business, where I was risk adverse and probably more scared to spend my money. And so it was the same belief system I had on both ends, but they were manifesting very differently in those 2 areas. In a relationship, they may have showed up very differently. And so I think that the fact that you're talking about these like generational traumas and these things, we tend to repeat patterns, and we repeat the patterns because they're comfortable to us. Good or bad, they're comfortable. If we saw our parents smoking, chances are we might pick up smoking, and we may do it because it's a comfort thing. We know it's bad, but we still do it because it's comfortable. So I love that you're talking about this and addressing this, because I think so often we say, do this, do that, but we didn't really know why we're doing it. And if we haven't really addressed the problem, then all we're doing is shoving that under the table, in my eyes, or slapping a Band-Aid off and not really solving a problem.
100%. One of the things I love and hate about entrepreneurship is that it is like the best self-development course ever. Like all your stuff will come up. Like for me, I'm a pretty confident person. Like I've been successful my whole life. I've just been a really hard work. My parents taught me hard work. And yet, like I'm bumping up against I'm unloved, nobody loves me, I can't trust people. Like that's what I dealt with my dad, right? People will reject me. And I was bullied because I was a smart kid. So I got bullied a lot. And I'm tiny. I'm 47 and I'm like 4'10". So as a kid, and I had glasses and I had braces. And so there's a lot of those feelings that often come up when I doubt myself. And so I got to keep checking it in place so that I can move forward. Otherwise, I start to go into my smallness and I make it about me when it's really not about me. It is so much bigger than that. But you got to keep nipping that in the butt and learn how to quiet that voice. And mine says, because I'm Filipino, first generation. Okay. Like most of my family has never finished high school because they get pregnant. So and we're Catholic. So the voice in my head says, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, are you ready to level up your leadership skills? Tune in now for an exclusive offer designed just for you.
This is my time.
Did you know 63% of consumers prefer businesses aligned with their values? Recognizing your core values isn't just vital for business growth, it's the bedrock of effective leadership. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or an aspiring creator, identifying your core values is a key step in constructing the framework of a successful leader, enabling you to lead authentically, expand your business, and live life on your terms.
I never settled on play, putting the kettle to flame. I go 100 all day, foot on the pedal, no brakes. 10, 9, paid on my dues, waited in line. 8, 7.
Are you ready to access tools to kickstart your leadership journey? Unlock a treasure trove of insights and get your free resources at www.linktree/Jennifer Loehding. Take that crucial first step toward realizing your leadership aspirations and elevate your leadership game today.
Ready to shine, brighter than all of the
Right.
Right? You're nobody is actually what it's saying. Who do you think you are? You are nobody.
Right. Yep. You gotta work through those things. I'm doing a lot of work on nervous system regulation right now. Actually, I'm getting certified. Just another thing I'm adding to my, like we do, add to our skill sets, right? But everything I think we do in these spaces, a lot of times is because we're going through these ourselves. We're trying to learn them. And, I tell her all the work that I've ever done is never been because I intended to show it to somebody. I did it because I wanted to learn how to do it for myself because I was trying to heal something. But there's a lot of, you're talking about, generational traumas, and a lot of these traumas, they talk about like somatic release, things that you can do. And if you think about it, when you have these things, they're really dysregulating the nervous system is what they're doing. These whatever these belief systems, there is energy wrapped around this stuff, emotional stuff that is wrapped around these things that we're going through. And those actually disrupt the nervous system. And so what I'm actually studying right now is all about how do we regulate the nervous system. And we can do that also in place of working to heal these traumas too. And so that we can release some of the energy around some of this stuff. So there's a lot
100%.
to this, but I do think you're on the right track with the whole idea of we've got to attack those things because they will continue to manifest, and in none of this in any area of our life is it they don't go away. We just learn how to deal. These things don't necessarily just erase from our memory bank. It's just we get better at allowing them to identify us. We recognize, oh, there it's surfacing. I'm doing the behavior that is indicative of that thought pattern I'm having, and I don't like the person I am right now. I mean, that's at least what it is for me. It's like I know when I do something after, if it's been a reaction to something that's, something that's triggering for me, I will go back and I will actually tell myself, I don't like that person that I was today because I was doing that behavior. That thought was hijacking me right now,
Yeah.
So a lot of good stuff
For
with
me,
that.
I kind of go through a little process. So depending on what I'm dealing with, it might be like, okay, Jeanell, what are you resisting? Or what is the fear? Right.
Yeah.
I really like, because I'm so over analytical, I
Yeah.
like to kind of break it down like that.
Break it
Okay,
down,
what
because
is
somebody listening to this, Janelle, they may be doing this right now, and they're going, you know what? I have this pattern of behavior, and we keep doing it, and I need to know, like, how do I just pause?
Yeah, how do I pause? Right. And I think too, there's this thought that's like, oh, there's a fear. Okay, that's legit. That's a good excuse for me not to do what I need to do, because that's the fear. And we think that the fear is real, but it's just a belief. And we think though a belief is true. Well, consider it's not true. Consider it is a chemical reaction in our brain that we held for 17 seconds, and a 17-second thought becomes now a belief. Now we
Right.
decide that it's true. And then we hold that for decades until we realize and we stop and go, wait, but it's not true. It's not true that I'm unlovable. It's not true that I can't trust people. It's not true that everybody I love will leave me. But for the longest time, I had it that was what was so. Right. And we see fear as like this like brick wall. And I'm like, well, consider that wall is actually, you can actually push that wall over if you realize that fear is just all in between our ears.
Yeah.
Right. And how many times do we stop doing something that we truly love and know is going to be of service because we think this fear is real, when it's really just changing our thoughts? So I'm like a big neuroscience nerd, love it, and all the mindset stuff. And I've been able to accomplish a lot in my life. And one of the things I actually did was, when I was 6, I met the Queen of England.
So awesome.
Yeah. So my mom was, she came to Canada in 1983, and she was opening a wing of a hospital. And so they invited her to come and cut the ribbon. And my mom worked at this hospital. And at the time I was a dancer. I was a brand new dancer learning ballet and tap. So, curtsying was like my thing. And so when my mom said this opportunity was coming, and, it was all over TV. So I was like super excited to see her. So we got invited to go and watch her do the thing. And so on the way there, I said to my mom, like, hey, we need to stop for flowers. Like, she's going to see me and she's going to wonder where her flowers are. My mom's like, oh my God. But so she stops, buys like the cheapest flowers. Cause of course she's like, hell no, you're not going to meet the queen. Right. So she buys the cheapest flowers. I'm pretty sure they were $2 daisies.
Janelle well enough.
You didn't know me. Yeah. That was my early days. And so we're sitting there waiting. And there's this like yellow rope. And we all had to stand behind it. But of course, I'm tiny. This yellow rope is like above my visual, place.
Yeah.
And so all I could see was feet. So I could see, there's probably 30 people in her entourage, right? Between the police and her people. So anyway, finally she comes over and you can hear the roar starting. You're like, okay, it's happening. So like everybody else, I'm running up and down or jumping up and down, trying to get her attention. Of course, I've got my flowers. She has to get my flowers. And of course I'm screaming like everyone, and I could see the feet passing me by. And I remember having this thought going, oh no, like this is my one chance and it's gone. And then there was this voice that said, hell no, we have come too far. This is happening. And before I knew it, I bolted after her. And she's probably about 20, 30 feet down the road already. But
Yeah.
I just chased her with my flowers and I'm like screaming at her to try to get her attention. And of course the crowd is like freaking out. Some of them are laughing. But anyway, and then the police start chasing me because I'm not supposed to be there.
Right.
But she hears this and she turns around and she sees me. And then she looks around, she tells everybody like, it's okay. So everyone, backs off and she comes over to me and she says, hello, dear. Are those flowers for me? And I said, yes, Your Majesty. And I do a curtsy. And right in that moment, a newspaper reporter gets a shot. So I actually have a photo right here behind me.
So awesome.
I got on the front page of the newspaper the next day. Anyway, she passed away, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, I guess. So when she passed, I actually dug up this photo, which was in my garage. And as I'm looking at this photo, I'm realizing like, man, this little girl is so freaking fearless. Like, would I have done that now as an adult? Probably not. I would have had all these considerations, right? All these reasons why I shouldn't. And then I thought to myself, like, she is who I want to become again. That girl who didn't care. She was relentless. She knew what she wanted, and she wanted to meet the freaking queen. And she knew that she was probably going to get in trouble. It was probably not going to work, but she needed to take that. She needed to know for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. What a story. Wow. What a story. I love it. I think it's such a great story. When was this rough? Like do you know what year? Do you remember like what year this was around? I want to look it up.
I was 6 and it was 1983.
Okay. It's so awesome. I think that is so, what a story. And I think it's such a great testament to the whole, being fearless, but which kind of leads me to what I want to ask you now is let's tie this together now, because you're talking about being fearless, which are the people that we are trying to inspire here on Starter Girlz, right? Is to be fearless and to go after those things. But there's got to be that line when we're talking about relationships, right? And I know for me personally, I backtrack when I started, 22 years in Mary Kay, I started my journey when my oldest daughter I think she was 18 months at the time. And so I had 2 more kids in the middle of that. And so I was always that mom that was juggling some sort of relationship in my business. And I remember very early on having a lot of guilt around that, just where to draw the line, make the compromise. When is it okay? And we learned a lot of great skills in America. I'm not going to begrudge it because we learned a lot of really great skills about how to book and make use of our time. But it wasn't until later, probably in the last, as my kids have gotten older, my youngest is now 19, 2 of them are out of the house, that I've gotten to a place where now I realize and value the importance of understanding boundaries. Like really, when you're working, you're working. When you're not, you're not. And being okay with setting those boundaries, but also being present when you're in, trying to be present when you're in your relationships.
Yeah. Oh, it is a tough juggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think to your, when you're talking about boundaries, I think boundaries start with loving ourselves first. And I think a lot of people miss this, especially inside relationships Many of us, including myself, we're taught that, relationships, you get into relationships it doesn't matter if you love yourself or not, because you find someone to fill that hole.
Right.
But what we realize later on is like, no, that is not their job. And if we put all the expectation and pressure on them, it really negatively impacts the intimacy in the relationship, because you're looking outside of yourself to fill a hole that only you know how to fill.
Bam. Thank you.
And to take it another step further, even if we had a partner, so this is a very common complaint between couples.
Okay.
He doesn't appreciate me. And then he says, of course I appreciate you. You don't tell me you love me and I'm beautiful. I tell you I love and beautiful every single day. You just don't hear me. Well, you're not reassuring me. Okay, well, what do you want me to say? Well, you should know. So I'm like, okay, hold on. So you want reassurance. And what he's saying isn't working. Okay, so what is it that you want to hear? She says, well, he should know. I said, but he's already tried and it hasn't worked. So why don't you give him the formula? Like, we need to set up our partners and our family and the people we love to win with us. We can't leave it up to them to read our minds, to know what we need to hear. We need to set them up. And so I said to her, well, what is it that you need to hear? She goes, I don't know. I said, well, if you don't know, how is he going to know?
It's good.
And if no matter what he says, it's not right, and you're going to be upset with him, no wonder he's shutting down, because no matter what he does, it's wrong.
Yeah.
So like with my husband, I believe in training your partner. I am such a believer in that. So with my husband, I'm like this, honey, when I'm upset, here's what I need you to do. I need you to sit down, you turn off the TV or your phone. I need you to make eye contact to me and sit and just listen. Don't try to fix me. Don't try to give me advice.
Yeah.
Just sit with me and be my friend and just be empathetic. And when I'm done, tell me you love me. Tell me everything's going to be okay. And then go get me some ice cream.
Hey,
so he knows the formula to what Janelle needs in that moment of like emotional breakdown.
Yeah.
And then guess what? He gets to be the hero.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing in this is really coming down to communicating, right? Communicating your needs, because if you don't, then you're setting your partner up for failure, because you're expecting them to read your mind, and they're not going to be able to read your mind. Am I getting this on some level? It's good. I think, it's funny we say communication, because I think communication is so important in everything, right? And I think so often in everything we do, business, family, whatever it is, friends, I think so many problems occur because there's a lack of communication. And it usually is somebody assumes something about somebody, never had a conversation with the person. It takes me back to, I had a guy on my other podcast, Damon Lemby. He is the CEO of Learn It. And he's probably I've talked to so many incredible people, but he is one that keeps sticking in my mind, because we talked a lot about leadership in that particular episode. And he was was drafted into baseball, and then he took over his dad's company, worked his way up to the CEO. But one of the things when I listened to him talk, I just envisioned that he's probably a really good leader, because he listens and he knows. I'm sure he's not perfect, but he listens and he knows when to shut up and when to talk, the wisdom to know, when to do what. One of the things we talked about is in that particular episode was finding out where people need to be placed, putting them in the right positions. But he also said you need to know when to let them go. And he said it shouldn't be a surprise when you let somebody go, because you've already communicated with them plenty of times about what the expectations are. And so I think that's what, when I hear you talk, that's what's coming to mind to me, is that setting your partner up for success really is about telling them what you need. And if you're not going to be willing to do that, then how can you be upset with their behavior? Okay, so maybe, what I would love to ask you to kind of round this out is maybe, somebody that is kind of in this position right now, they're going to come to you, and you got somebody that's sort of they're in that teetering position of, do I stay? Do I not? Maybe what would be the first thing that if they were going to come to you, maybe a recommendation or suggestion you would offer them?
Right. Okay. So the first thing we need to look at, because typically when they come to me, there is a complaint. There's a core complaint. And a lot of times there's a bunch of symptoms, right? Let's say there's like 10 different symptoms. We don't have sex. We don't talk. We fight a lot. There's all these things. We feel like roommates. So the first thing for me to figure out by listening is what is the actual core issue? And typically the core issue is that they don't feel appreciated.
Yeah.
There's no quality time together. There's no fun. There's no joy in the relationship. And there are childhood wounds or beliefs that are impacting the relationship. So the one I hear about is I don't trust that person.
Yeah.
My first question is, who is the first person who broke your trust? All of a sudden, they start talking about their mom, their dad. Okay. So now we start digging in there because they've been so focused on their partner and going, my partner is what's wrong. But when I can get them to look at themselves and go, well, maybe there's something within me that I haven't resolved. Now they're willing to take responsibility and take the onus off their partner. Her.
So this has been good, Janelle. So if somebody listening to this, here's what we're talking about today. We did a lot of talking here, a lot about communication, a lot about dealing with our junk. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, where would you like us to send them?
Yeah, they can check me out on my website, and that is saveourmarriage.ca.
I like it.
And they can book a free consult with me there.
Yeah, I like it. Great webpage title. Liking it, Miss Janelle. Well, love what you're doing. Keep doing your thing. You are certainly passionate about it. And I told you the first time I met you, I love your energy. I think that's important. I'm sure you and your husband have a fun relationship. I can just tell by your warm energy that there's probably a lot of good going there. And you guys totally balance each other out. So, and of course, to our listeners, we appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, connect with Janelle if you need more information. And maybe you're in that place. You want some help. Go reach out to her. And as I always say, two things I want to say. Be sure you head over to Apple, give us a review, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and be kind to one another. We will see you next time.